I always felt like I was living in a fairy tale. Not the kind where the prince saves the princess, but the kind where two people find each other and build something real, without falsity, without lies. He was caring, attentive, able to anticipate my desires before I even realized them. We could be sitting in a cafe, and he would just take my hand not because he had to, but because he wanted to. I felt like I knew him down to the last detail. But here's the problem: when you believe in a fairy tale too much, reality always finds a way to ruin it. The first was a delay at work. It's a common occurrence, isn't it? Everyone can get stuck in the office, especially when an important project is looming. But for some reason, that's when I got this weird feeling, like something was wrong. I chased it away, laughing at myself. It's silly. Trust is the foundation of any relationship. But then there were the unanswered calls. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, didn't hear you, he'd text when I was starting to panic. Random? Maybe. But then came the strange looks. You know that feeling you get when someone looks at you differently than they used to? Like something has changed, but he hopes you won't notice. His eyes were different, not cold, no, more like guilty. Like he was hiding something, but trying to keep playing the same game. One day I decided to test myself. It was a normal evening, I got home early, cooked dinner. Nothing special, I just wanted to spend time with him. But when he walked in, for a second there was a look of confusion in his eyes. Not joy, not tired after a hard day, but confusion. He quickly hid it behind his usual smile, but I could see it. Was there something you wanted to hide? I asked, deliberately light. He only grinned, walked over, and kissed me on the temple. That's silly. I just didn't expect you to be home. You know, when you love someone, you start to catch not only their words, but also the pauses between them. And there was too much unspoken in that pause. I started noticing little things. The smell of someone else's perfume that I didn't have. The text messages he answered too quickly and immediately hid his phone. One night he left it charging in the living room, and when he woke up and saw me just holding it in my hands, albeit without even trying to unlock it, he was genuinely scared. You don't trust me? He asked with contrived calm, but I could hear his voice shaking. I trust you, I replied and put the phone back on the nightstand. But something inside me was already cracking. I didn't know if it was paranoia or if I really felt our world falling apart. But in that moment, I realized that if I dug deeper, I might learn something that would change me forever. So I thought I'd do some digging. Some things you just feel. It's like an intuition, a sixth sense, call it what you want, but it doesn't lie. That night, he said again that he'd be late. His voice was steady, calm, like it was business as usual. But I didn't believe in his business as usual anymore. Something inside me clicked. I wasn't the type of woman to make a scene or check phones. I believed that trust was sacred. But I wasn't testing him, I was testing myself. I needed to figure out if I was really going crazy with far-fetched thoughts or if I had something to be afraid of. The phone was on the bedside table, the screen black, lifeless. And then it flashed. One message. When are you going to tell her already? My heart clenched. It didn't just clench, it fell somewhere deep inside, and then rumbled in my ears. Her, who? Say what? My fingers went cold, but I didn't breathe, just watched. Not laughing, not angry, not yet. More like. I didn't understand. The screen went blank. I knew that if I pressed it, I would see the previous message. A glimpse into a world where my man was with someone else. But did I want to? I wanted to. Touched the screen. And the world cracked like glass under high heels. There were a lot of messages. A lot. They started with something innocent, a phrase that could be explained, miss you, can't wait, you were incredible. But the further I scrolled through the correspondence, the more my stomach clenched and my hands became icy cold. This isn't just texting. This isn't flirting. This is a reality in which I don't exist. I reread the words, but I couldn't comprehend them. They formed into sentences, but I couldn't believe in the meaning. I love your flavor so much. What happened yesterday was crazy. You'll be mine, won't you? This wasn't a casual connection. It was an affair that had been going on for a long time. Perhaps longer than I'd even realized. I should have been angry. I should have screamed, blown it all to hell, texted him, I know everything. But I sat there in the dark, his phone in my hands, and I couldn't bring myself to feel anything. Suddenly it hit me, who is she? Maybe I knew her. Maybe it was someone we knew. My heart raced as I clicked on the profile picture. The image opened. And whereas before I thought my world was falling apart, now it just shattered into pieces. I knew her. More than that, I trusted her. I'm going to pause for a moment. Write in the comments where you are hearing this story from, and if you have ever had something similar in your life. I'm curious to know if you've had moments when your intuition told you the truth, but you didn't immediately decide to believe it. And if you like stories like this, subscribe so you don't miss the sequel. I continue. I never thought I'd be in this position. That I'd be sitting in the dark, holding a phone that burned my fingers like fire. That in an instant, my whole life, everything I'd believed in, everything I'd trusted would turn to rubble. I had to do something. Call him? Make a scene? Wrestle a confession out of him? But then what? What would that get me? No, that's not what I needed to understand. I tried to run through my head a list of people I could talk to. Girlfriends? They'd immediately start convincing me to get revenge, and I didn't want revenge. I wanted to figure this game out all the way to the end. Family? No, too much emotion, too much unnecessary advice. And that's when one name flashed through my mind. His half-brother. We have never been particularly close. Of course we crossed paths, holidays, family gatherings, some common events. He was the kind of man who always stayed in the shadows. A little mysterious, with a slight smirk on his lips, as if he knew something that others didn't. I didn't understand why it was him. But that night I called him. Are you awake? My voice sounded unexpectedly steady, without a tremor. A brief pause, and then his low, slightly husky voice. What about you? I clenched my fingers on my phone. I need to talk. In person. Are you sure you want to do this? That question. There was already a hidden meaning in it. There was already knowledge in it. He knew what I meant. The meeting was almost silent. I arrived at the cafe and he was already waiting. Calm, relaxed, as if nothing had happened. But there was a hint of interest in his eyes. Is something wrong? He pretended not to understand, but I didn't buy it. I leaned closer and looked directly into his eyes. You already know, don't you? He grinned. What exactly do I know? You know about her. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't look away. And who is she? I felt anger boiling up inside. Don't play with me. I read the messages. I saw everything. He was silent. I waited for a reaction. Denial, surprise, shock. But instead, he smiled. He smiled like it wasn't a surprise. Like he was waiting for me to show up. Did you need to find out the truth for yourself? I clenched my teeth. You could have told me sooner. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his chest. Would you believe it? That question was like a slap in the face. Because deep down, I knew I wouldn't have believed it. If he'd ever told me that my man wasn't what he seemed, I would have laughed. I inhaled sharply to calm myself down. How many do you know? He leaned closer. Enough to know you came to me for a reason. I caught his gaze. There were too many secrets in his eyes. And I suddenly realized, He knew a lot more than I could have imagined. I was waiting for anything. Sympathy, some kind of explanation, maybe even advice. But not this. He looked at me in a way that made me uncomfortable. There was no pity in his eyes. Nor was there mockery. More like excitement. It's like he's been waiting for this moment. Like he knew I'd come sooner or later. Do you really want to know everything? His voice was too calm. I don't just want to. I have to. He raised an eyebrow slightly, and the corners of his lips trembled. Then it's a done deal. I frowned. What kind of deal? He leaned back as if he was enjoying what was happening. You'll know the truth. But for that, you'll play by my rules. I felt everything turn upside down inside. What rules? He didn't answer right away. Just watched. Waiting. Checking. Then slowly, almost lazily, he said. You want proof? All right. But just knowing isn't enough. You have to live this truth, experience it. And only then will you understand what's really going on. His words sounded too strange. Too meaningful. You're speaking in riddles. He grinned. I'm talking facts. If you just want to cry and feel sorry for yourself, that's one thing. But if you really want to know the whole story, be prepared for it not to be what you think it is. I didn't know exactly what he meant. But one thing I felt for sure was that he was in no hurry to reveal his cards for nothing. I squinted. And what do you want? He smiled again, but there was something in that smile that was dangerous. Trust. One night. You do whatever I say, no questions asked. And at the end, I'll give you what you came for. I froze. It was bullshit. It was stupid. But the worst part was, I wanted to agree. I needed to know. I had to find out the whole truth. I exhaled slowly and nodded. Playing. I said yes. Not because I trusted him. Not because I wanted to play his game. It was because I needed to know. This night could have been a mistake, could have backfired on me, but the fear receded before the burning desire to get to the truth. Good choice, he said, nodding as if we'd made some kind of agreement. We walked out of the cafe and he led me behind him. Where are we going? You agreed to play without question, didn't you? I pressed my lips together. Okay. So be it. We arrived at a place I would never have connected to this investigation. An ordinary house, dimly lit, unremarkable building. But inside, behind its walls, there was more than I expected. He led me into the spacious living room and before I could ask anything, he just turned on the tape. Audio file. And it was my man's voice. You do realize she's going to find out sooner or later, right? He said to someone. I recognized the answer immediately. Of course, that's why we have to be careful. It was her. A woman whose name I never wanted to say again. My heart was pounding frantically. What is it? I asked, feeling my lungs constrict from lack of air. His half-brother looked at me intently. Just what you were looking for. I listened further. I can't do this anymore. It's not right, my man's voice sounded nervous. You've already made your choice. There's no turning back now. I closed my eyes. All these months, all this time he knew what he was doing. It wasn't an accident, it wasn't a mistake. It was a conscious choice. I wanted to feel pain. I had to feel the pain. But instead, I felt disappointed. And then there's determination. I opened my eyes and looked at his half-brother. Why did you show me this? He tilted his head slightly to the side. Because I wanted to see what you'd do now. And that's when I realized. I was no longer a victim. I came out of that game a winner. Because things are different now. Now I was deciding what the ending to this story would be. Write in the comments what you think about this story. What would you do in my place? Have you ever had a similar situation where the truth was more complicated than it seemed at first glance? Your comments are very important. I read every one and appreciate your support. Don't forget to subscribe and give it a like so you don't miss out on new exciting stories. And if you've listened to the end, write in the comments, now I get to decide the finale. Have a good day everyone and see you in the next story.